The Blowing Rock Civic Association is pleased to present interviews with 3 of the 4 candidates for the Blowing Rock Town Council: Pete Guarini, Doug Matheson, and Melissa Pickett. Candidate Nancy Collins was invited to participate in this question and answer session, but she was not available. Mayor Charlie Sellers' candidacy for re-election is uncontested. The county has refused to fully fund a 24/7 transport ambulance team to serve Blowing Rock in the Blowing Rock Fire District area, creating a major risk to health and safety of our residents and visitors. The question is, what is your position on adopting a compromise subsidy to the county to provide 24/7 transport ambulance service to Blowing Rock based on a 50-50% cost-sharing formula with the taxpayers of the Blowing Rock Fire District?
I believe that the EMS service will only be as good as what the community can afford. And if most people are wanting us to raise taxes to pay maybe 2-3 times for a service that has already been provided in other areas of the county, then yes, I'll consider it. But it's a little more complicated than just a 50-50 split. The rural district is involved, which with the rural district, they do not quite benefit as much as a town does, because 65 to 70% of the calls run by EMS is run inside the city limits. So they don't quite benefit as much as the town would benefit on this. Plus, their rural board would have to decide whether they want to raise taxes, which means they have to go out to all their public and talk to, and they also have to get permission to the county to do this. And we already provide a large subsidy to EMS right now. We have a level 3, we got 3 paramedics on each level at all 3 stations in our district that go out. We have a backup ambulance system that's called out that's not funded. We provide a place over here at our fire station in town at roughly no charge at all for the crew and the ambulance. So we already subsidize in ways, the taxpayers are already subsidizing in ways for the EMS system. But if most people are wanting this and ask for this, then yes, I'll consider it.
This is a tough subject. We've been fighting this subject for like 47 years now, trying to get a full-time ambulance here, but I'm all for having a full-time ambulance in Blowing Rock. I don't know what the solution is. I know council's working with it, Shane's been working with it, Kent Graham's working with it. I do have a concern on the 50-50 split. Half of that is coming from the town, which would be our taxpayers. The other half is coming from the fire district, which our taxpayers are in also, so that's kind of a double tax situation for us. We can't get the county commissioners to give us a full-time ambulance already, so I don't know if we'll get them to agree to the tax in the fire district either, because that goes before the board for the fire district, but it ultimately has to be approved by the county commissioners also. So we're back to being in front of the county commissioners, which has not been real good for us yet. So if we could get it, that's awesome. I do believe we need to also concentrate on the fact that our fire department is amazingly staffed. I know it's not what anybody wants to hear. You know, we all want the aha at the end of the rainbow. We want that 24/7 ambulance, but we have 14 firefighters full-time, and 11 of them are top paramedics. I mean, that's what you get when Watauga comes. You get one of those on the ambulance. We have 11 of those here in Blowing Rock full-time. And since May, COVID protocols have changed, and they answer all level calls now, so they're back to being normal and answering our calls. So while we work towards our goal of the 24/7 ambulance, I think we need to concentrate on that too, and informing our citizens that we have best care arriving as soon as the call goes out to take care of us until that ambulance gets here. So I want us to not forget that little piece of the puzzle too, but still work towards our goal of the 24/7 ambulance.
Yes, we need the service. And I think that when you get into the details, it's something that people have to understand that the county is in control of this process. They're mandated by the legislature to do the taxing and everything. So I think it's important that people, the voters here, realize that yes, we need it. How much is it going to cost? Because out campaigning, people ask me, we're already paying money to the county, and now you're going to suggest that we have more money to pay for this service. And then the question is, isn't that double taxation? And I say, well, if the people really want it, then we're going to have to figure out a way to provide the money to do this, because it's something, and it's an imbalance of the money that goes to the county versus what we get for that service. I mean, if you call an ambulance in Boone, it's 6 to 9 minutes. If you call an ambulance up here, it could be 9 to 20 minutes before an ambulance gets here. Now, we have the best ETM people in the world, and they do their job, and they'll stabilize you, but it's getting from here to the hospital. So when I get elected, I'll work with the town manager, the mayor, and council people to work out an arrangement to get this process started.
Okay, I ran the first time in 2015, and I was pushing for a 24/7 transport service. We have some of the best paramedics that any town could strive to have in our community right now. And 2017, I pushed for a 24/7 service. 2019, I pushed for a 24/7 service without any cooperation from Watauga County. Now, Boone does not have to pay for their transport. Beach Mountain does, Seven Devil does, and we do. That's not right. That is not fair. That's not fair to the citizens. I brought a proposal to the council at the last meeting. It was just for them to digest. And that is that we pull back 50% of the sales tax we're sending to Watauga County, and that be applied to a 24/7 transport. The other 25% come from the fire district, and 25% from the taxpayers. I do not feel it's fair that the taxpayers are obligated to pay for this service in full. I don't think they should pay for 50% of it. I think 25% is asking enough. I feel like we need the 24/7 service. We're growing. We have a lot of tourists. Our demographics are changing. We have more and more people moving here because we're a fantastic town and a great community. It is time that Watauga County jumped up to the plate for one of the biggest cash cows for Watauga County, which is the town of Blowing Rock. That's my take on it.
The downtown land use code for West Main Street is out of date with market conditions and not consistent with the recommendations in our comprehensive plan to protect the character of West Main Street. What is your position regarding an update of the land use code for West Main Street to balance the need for progress and preservation of our historic village?
Okay, I was a little bit behind on this one, so I actually went and visited with Kevin Rothrock this week on this one to get a little update. And from what I understand, our planning board is actually working on this subject right now. I was a little confused on this one about the density. I know like in residential we have where you can only build so many units per acre. So I was asking Kevin for clarification in downtown, coming from a commercial background where we owned a business for 20 years and now, as of January, we're residents instead of business owners. So I was getting a little clarification, but if I understood Kevin right, our ordinances are going to somewhat take care of this. We won't need a density setting for the commercial district because our setbacks, our building heights will contain this. But as far as being in favor of it, I am. I just want to make sure that our growth does not take away the charm of our town. Because, I mean, we all live here because we love being in a small town, and we have tourists come here because they want to enjoy the small town. So I don't want us to lose that aspect, but at the same time, if our town doesn't grow, it won't exist. I mean, that's just fact of life, it'll die. So I think we need to make sure we're controlling our growth and keeping our charm. But I do believe, talking to Kevin, that that's exactly what the planning board is working towards with changing the ordinance in that section of town.
Having served on the planning board for 4 years now, I'm now the chairman, I see specifically on a day-to-day basis those kinds of needs. And so in some of the meetings that we've had from different neighborhood groups and everything, that is a prime situation that gets talked about. So I would, when elected, do something in the order of this process. The council asked the planning board 2 years ago to do a complete review of the downtown general business district. So on a subcommittee, which I was a part of, they took every week for 6 months and reviewed all the codes and zoning situations. We wrote a report. We gave that report to the council, and unfortunately, they did nothing with it. And that was very disappointing because not only the time and energy that we put into it, but few people know this, but if that recommendation had been approved, Rainy Lodge would not have been built. So my suggestion would be, moving forward, the comprehensive plan is about to be reviewed next year, and it'll come to the planning board to do that. All the work that we did for the council, that's still there. So somebody could come in and say, let's revisit all that, update it, amend it, and that would address some of the concerns that you just raised.
You know, every community has to grow. And it's our jobs as elected officials that you, the citizens, put us in for, to maintain beauty, consistency of the community. It's up to the planning board to come to the council with recommendations on what improvements can be made, whether it be setbacks, height of buildings, occupancy, parking. I feel like that, you know, growing up here, this town has grown a lot. Some things have been removed that probably shouldn't have been removed. Many buildings have been restored. And I think that this is a very fluid situation. There's no one fix. And I think that recommendations need to come from the citizens to the council and to the planning board, and realistic recommendations on how do we continue moving forward with our uniqueness, our quaintness, but we're still going to grow. So I'm in favor of always looking at positive change. And how do we regulate it? How do we maintain it? And I as mayor and the council, we have to rely on the citizens. We have to rely on the planning board to make these recommendations and bring them to us.
One thing I think that needs to be done first is I think we need to get more community involvement and reviews on this. The 2014 comprehensive plan asked that we do an architectural design regulation for Main Street that separates and differentiates the east side from the west side in setbacks and in height. That way they don't look alike. You want the east side to be built mainly back in the footprint up to the sidewalk, but then you want the west side to set back. It's what makes the town look so different and unique. I have a vision that I would like to see for the west side, well, east side both, is I would like to see us change Main Street to where on the west side is angled parking. On the east side, you extend the sidewalk, widen the sidewalk out because it's so congested on that side, and have no parking at all on the east side. I think it would change the looks of Main Street, but I think it would free up a lot of Main Street.
Special or conditional use permits are quasi-judicial public hearings that restrict the ability of the council to discuss, hear, or consider input from the community. The question: what is your position on eliminating special or conditional use permits in favor of special zoning permits that allow community input?
Again, because I'm on the planning board and chairman, I deal with that issue all the time. It comes up, and there's somewhat of a disconnect, I think, sometimes, because at the planning board, anybody can come in and talk about a project. It's only when it goes to the council that it's mandated by the legislature, by the way, that there are certain rules that have to be followed. I do believe that the people, the citizens of the town, should and must have a better access to those kinds of situations. So again, when I get elected, I would be prepared to look at these codes and see if we can make some modifications to make that easier so that people could come before and express an opinion on a project. That's, it's going to be up to the citizens and for the new council to do that. And I would very much support that process because I do believe that that situation needs to be changed.
I think the special use permits have a place. When they should be used, I think, should be determined by our planning and zoning department. Sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't. In certain cases, someone that lives over on Green Hill, should they have a position on something that's going in at the horse show grounds? Maybe not. I feel like when it's something that directly impacts the whole community, then it should fall under conditional zoning, where all can speak. But when it's something that does not directly impact the whole community, but yet does fall under the SUP protocol, then maybe the SUP should be used. So I feel like it's got its place. When we use it and when we don't is determined by code. And so for right now, unless something comes about that is better, that we can better utilize, that is more useful, then so be it. But we have conditional zoning and we have the special use permitted zoning. I haven't seen any good suggestions yet other than let's just go to conditional zoning. And I feel like that in many cases, everyone has and should supply input, but in some cases they should.
We really have three types of permits, and I like all three. One being your common zoning permit, which is really handled by our planning department and Kevin Rothrock and his staff. Then you have the conditional, what I call still the conditional use permit. And, you know, it's quasi-judicial. It's based on sworn testimony and expert opinion. And I think the developers like to use it. If you have a project coming to you that meets what the town has set up in code and ordinances, and they ask for nothing, they meet all that, then I feel like they should have a reason to be issued that permit, but you can set conditions on it. I mean, you may ask for some extra buffering, or you may want the retention system a little different. But then you have the special rezoning, and that's wide open. That means the community can talk to the planning board can talk to us, the community can talk to us. It's wide open, and most developers will use that if they're going to ask for something. If they need a type of variance, a height variance, a setback variance. A lot of developers will use that and get the community behind the project before going in front of the council. And being that so wide open, you know, you make your decision here in council chambers. You know, it's where the decisions are made. But I think having both types of permits makes what Blowing Rock's rich history and unique appearance is being able to offer both types of permit to developers. So I would love to see us keep both of them.
This is another one of those tricky subjects in Blowing Rock that has a lot of multiple opinions on it. I understand everybody wants to say what happens in their town. Nobody, I mean, in a town our size, you know, of course, nobody wants to see McDonald's, Walmart show up, but when it comes to the process, there are written rules that come, whether they're municipal level or state level, that we have to follow if you're on council. And they're put in place so not only to protect the town, but to protect the developers who want to come into your town. So as far as doing away with the SUP, I don't agree with that. I believe there is a purpose for it. If someone comes in and wants to build and they meet all of our codes and all of our codes are up to where they need to be to protect our town, I don't see an issue with that. If they're not asking for variances, they're meeting everything that the town requires of them, it should be a pretty straightforward process. You know, they should be able to bring their plans in, meet everything, and should be able to move through pretty quickly. If it's a larger project with more moving parts, more variances are being asked, off the top of my head, the 7 acres on Main Street always pops into my mind. It's a huge piece of property. It's going to be a huge, trying to think of I just lost the word. You know, if it gets developed, it'll be a huge imprint on our town. But that's a whole different scenario. Our town residents should have a, somewhat say in that. So using the conditional use is a good thing for that. But if someone just comes in and it's just a regular piece of property, you're just putting a building on, it matches all the codes, you're asking for no variances, it's straightforward, I think that should be a simple process that you go before planning board, which anyone can attend, and you can ask questions, address issues there. And then it should move to council, and it should be a straightforward process. I mean, so I do believe there is room in our town for a SUP.
Number 4, tourism congestion. The success of tourism has resulted in significant congestion and threatens the quality of life of our residents. Roger Brooks' primary recommendation for the TDA Sustainable Tourism Study is to manage congestion primarily with self-funded parking and wayfinding solutions. The question: what is your position on the Brooks plan to reduce congestion with paid parking, remote parking facility, dedicated shuttle service, and wayfinding?
You know, my many years of business, using a consultant 99% of the time told us what we already knew. And the outside source just further either enhanced or gave it more concreteness and pushed the decisions along. The Roger Brooks study did open our eyes on signage. Yes, we need signage. People don't know where to park. Some people don't know where the downtown is. And we have already instituted some of what Roger Brooks has put that's going to be in his report, one of which is crosswalk signage, lighted crosswalk signage, and new traffic lights at Sunset and Main and 221 and Main. We agreed to that 8 months ago. The council voted on it and approved it. Right now, all the equipment's been ordered. Now we're just waiting on the equipment to come in. So that has been done. We've been looking at satellite parking, which everybody agrees we need satellite parking. That is something the council's currently addressing, the possibility of purchasing additional property in town or within the town limits for satellite parking. As far as paid parking, I think it's a good thing. I've received one parking ticket in the town of Blowing Rock, which it took me 10 minutes to go to the police station and pay. $10. It didn't break the bank, but a lot of people will pay $10 for 2 hours parking or $15 for 3 hours parking, particularly in our town, because it's so unique. We have a lot of good shops, a lot of good restaurants that people want to visit, and I feel like the paid parking is a good idea moving forward. As far as shuttle service, yes, I mean, it was funny because one of Roger's comments to me was he saw the apple cart and thought it was a produce truck, not realizing it was a shuttle, till he saw the shuttle sign on it. And but then he said, well, where does it go? So he had a good point that when you get on the shuttle, you need to know where it's going. And that's going to be moving forward with additional signage on where the shuttle stops are. And then if we do satellite parking, we will institute some type of shuttle system from the satellite parking. This is also a fluid situation. This is ongoing, and we're going to have to continue making improvements. So signage, I think, is a good thing. Paid parking is a good idea, and that will help finance additional parking outside of the downtown. And of course, the crosswalk items, that's been done, it's going to be done.
Well, I've been part of a, we call it a transportation committee here in Blowing Rock, trying to bring a shuttle system or a public transit system to Blowing Rock. Unfortunately, the last 2 years, since we've started the program up, we've had to deal with COVID. So last summer, we actually did away with it because nobody wanted to get on a confined space and ride a bus. The congestion and the tourism congestion, I would rather see us have the congestion than not have anything. Because I remember the lean years here in town when we didn't have much. I recently read an article that the top 25 resorts and destinations in the United States saw a huge decrease in their occupancy tax last year. We've been on the other end of it. We've seen a great increase. Wayfinding, I'd love to see that come back. We had it once before. The merchants that are off Main Street, it would work great for them to let people know, do I want to walk down this hill or not walk down this hill? is there something down there worth looking at? So wayfaring signs would be great. The shuttle system, getting it up and running. I would love to see a graduated parking system to where the closer to Main Street, the more it costs you to park, to try and get more people, especially the employees, to maybe satellite parking. But in order to do that, we've got to get the transit system up and running, because they need to know that if they get here at 9:45, their job starts at 10, that somebody's going to get them from spot A to spot B on time. So you have to get that up and running. But a lot of this also, we have to look at, will our infrastructure and will our sidewalks handle a whole lot more tourism? So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle.
I don't want to speak a whole lot on the Brooks presentation yet, because what he has presented is a preliminary finding, and I'd rather not give a whole lot of opinion on a preliminary finding, because his finalized one will be out, I believe, in December. But on the preliminary findings, I mean, it's no secret. We all know we have a parking issue in Blowing Rock. All you have to do is drive downtown on Saturday afternoon. I do believe we need to work on parking. I don't have an issue with paid parking. I don't want to see a bunch of meters down Main Street. I think that would look horrid. If we could do either the kiosk theory or the paid on our cell phones, I think that would be wonderful. Not only would it probably help with the parking issue, but it would also be a little extra income for the town that we could use for infrastructure or whatever. Parking decks would be amazing if we can find land, A, that's available, or and B, that we can build on. We all know what it's like to build up here. So wayfinding, I have to admit, when I sat in Roger Brooks' presentation and he had pictures of some of our signs, I was like, you know, I drive by that probably at least 4 times a week and never really noticed that the sign at 221 is 10 feet in the air. Yeah, I bet our visitors don't notice that, or, you know, the arrows point up in the air and not to the left or right. So, yeah, we probably do need to work on our wayfinding. So, yes, there are issues we need to work on, but I'd rather not give strong, we need to set this into motion until the final presentation is done. And he comes back and says, this is what I highly recommend. We're paying, you know, we're spending a lot of money for this presentation. I think we need to give him his time and opportunity to tell us what he seriously thinks at the end.
Thank you to Roger Brooks for coming here and spending a month. I mean, he's opened a lot of eyes, and I think those of us that live here on a full-time basis and are active in organizations know that this has been a problem. So for him to put together parking, wayfinding, and all these other things is a great thing. Parking, absolutely. It's time to start charging the tourists for parking on Main Street, Sunset, the garages, Brom. And I know there's been some pushback from locals, and my answer to that would be is to sell a discounted tag to the residents, so when they wanted to go down, they wouldn't be paying the full price. It's important that the parking thing get resolved quickly, because it's tying up a lot of situations in town and traffic. And some of the biggest violators are the real estate people who have offices on Main Street. They park there all day long, and some of the merchants and their employees do that. So we need to get parking out on 321 or wherever we can find a place to put parking, and start building more parking. Wayfinding and directional signals, absolutely a must. There are people that come up here and they drive around, they have no idea that there's parking over at the pool, there's parking at the church parking lot. So the wayfinding, and I know it's an expensive process, but we simply have terrible signing here, and we have to improve on that. And then I think, you know, Roger will come out with some other recommendations, and I trust he's been all over the country looking at this, and so I think we're going to hear some other interesting things. But parking and wayfinding will be a good start.
Town expenses to support tourism-related expenses exceed funding sources. Property taxes, $5.2 million, fund 60% of the town's budget of $8.6 million, but downtown property taxes, $387,000, provide only 4.5% of the town's budget. Other consumer-paid sales and occupancy taxes of $1.5 million provide a total of 17.9% of the town's budget. Question: what is your position on, first, establishing a downtown business improvement tax district to fund future infrastructure improvements, and two, amending the TDA funding formula to allocate excess revenue to support tourism expenses?
We have been working on a central business tax. I am for a central business tax. We have finally got what we consider the central business area mapped out and planned, and the evaluation done on what we project the central business district is worth. I would love to see that come into effect to help pay for the sidewalks, infrastructure, tourism-related items only is what that tax would go for. I would like for us to also look about seeking, we'd have to seek special legislation for this, but I'd love to see us take the TDA tax and go from what it is now, roughly 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 TDA, 1/3 to the town. I would love to see it go to a 50-50. I believe that Blowing Rock has become such a destination place now that we can reduce some of the money that we spend on media and advertising. And I would love to see us take that extra money and be able to spend it toward tourism-related items such as our shuttle system or parking decks or satellite parking, infrastructure, things that are tourism that we can use that tourism-related. But I'd love to see us seek that legislation and accomplish that.
So this is, again, that debatable side of our town. Our town is, so growing up, I grew up in West Virginia. When I moved there in the late 70s when my dad retired, it was coal country. Coal industry fell out and tourism saved my area of West Virginia. So I'm a strong advocate for tourism. Moving to Blowing Rock, I was like, okay, this is a great tourism town. I love it here, you know. But this town is very unique. It's not just about tourism here. There's those of us that live here full time that absolutely love our small town. I mean, you know, I go to Raleigh quite often to see my stepdaughter. It's a big city. I have fun there, but after 3 days, I'm like, oh my God, I'm ready to go home to my little itty bitty town. But there's also the other element of our town that there's people who only live here a couple of months out of the year, but still consider this town somewhat their home. Our town has so many elements to it that you have to balance. I can't imagine like what Shane and the staff go through in a year trying to balance all of it. But we can't exist without any of those elements. I mean, I know for a fact that if it wasn't for tourism, I wouldn't have 20 restaurants to choose from to go out to dinner because 1,200 year-round residents can't support 20 restaurants. So we can't live without any of the sectors. As far as the downtown tax, there's a lot of towns that do that. I would be for it if it went to a specific fund and there was detailed what we're going to spend it on. I don't want it to go to general fund and just be willy-nilly spent. It needs to be defined what we're spending it on. As far as the TDA tax goes, I think a great compromise there would be a 50-50 split. 50% goes to infrastructure and 50% goes to advertising for the town. Because due to our tourists coming in, due to our seasonal residents and our full-time residents, there is a huge amount of infrastructure. It's not an infrastructure of 1,200 residents. It's an infrastructure of 6,000 to 10,000 people constantly. So there is a huge infrastructure that has to be kept up. So I think a 50-50 split would be wonderful. But again, that 50% that's going to the town needs to be designated to what it's going, we're repairing sidewalks, we're doing this, we're doing that. It's not just going into the general fund and being allocated as whoever sees fit. I think it needs to be, we're spending this money every year like this to make sure it is staying into infrastructure.
In my walking downtown in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I have asked all the business owners how they would feel about a business tax. I didn't get a very good response to that, and I didn't get into the details about the imbalance of it, as you point out, property tax versus downtown tax. But there needs to be some mechanism to address a better balance. I'm not sure how a business district even gets set up. I'd have to educate myself and get some legal opinions on that. Is it simply the town council voting on something like that? I don't know, but I will, when I'm elected, I will definitely dig into that, and that will be a priority that I would like to take on, because there has to be a better mechanism for sure. On the TDA now has 2 sources of money. They keep some money, and then they give some money back to the town. And I remind people that the park that we just finished sort of refurbishing, that park got paid for by money from the TDA and the ABC stores. So it was paid for in its entirety by those 2 sources, and then there was some private money. So I think TDA money comes into the town and is used wisely. Whether it's the right balance or mechanism, I'd certainly be willing to look at that, because it's important for the town. And I think the TDA has proven that they're successful because we have all these tourists here.
Okay. Establishing a downtown business improvement tax. I'm split on that one. How do you do that? Do you just tax the downtown Main Street? Do you tax Valley Boulevard? And how about me at the Blowing Rock? Or how about the Green Park? How do you do this in a fair manner? I'm not sold on that. I know a lot of communities have a downtown, tax, which assist with infrastructure and so on. We're getting ready to start on the water sewer on Main Street. Some people have said, well, that's downtown. It is. But these are main lines that feed extreme north side of town, extreme south side of town. So it's not just downtown. So I'm really split on the taxing the downtown establishments. That I'm going to have to wait and see. Amending the TDA funding formula. Well, first off, I don't know if this has been addressed. To amend the TDA funding, first, TDA has to make that vote and make that recommendation to the council. Second, the council has to approve that change in funding. 3, the council has to send that request to the General Assembly. The General Assembly has to approve that change in TDA funding. Right now, we're at a 2/3, 1/3 split. As I stated, if the board wishes to change their distribution, the board has to vote on it unanimous. The council as well, and then the council has to send that to the General Assembly. So my take on TDA right now is it is what it is, unless the TDA board votes on a change and sends that to the council, and the council agrees, and then the state has to approve. Okay?
We hope this will help you be better informed when you go out to vote for this election. Thank you for joining us. you.